Good morning. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone present on behalf of the citizens of this county and the Pitt County Commissioners. I call this meeting to order. I believe Mr. McLaughlin has requested to be excused. Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Second it.
All right, let's vote.
Are these working?
Yes.
Yes.
In light of that, for the public that does not know, Mr. McLaughlin's wife passed away this past week, and that is the reason Melvin could not be here this morning. And also, as a memory of her, I'd like for us to have a moment of silent prayer and recognition of her and prayer for Melvin and his family. Let's do that at this time. Thank you. Amen. Now, did we have our roll call? I guess.
Yes.
All right, we did that. Let's all stand and we will have our invocation and pledge, please.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you today for your many blessings upon us. We thank you once again for the opportunity to assemble together in this room, and that we might have the opportunity to conduct the business of our great county. We pray that your blessings might be upon us and that we might make those decisions that are best for the citizens that we represent. And Father, we also remember our brother and fellow Commissioner Melvin and his family. Pray that you might bless them in their hour of bereavement. Help them, Father, to have the strength they need to manage through the next few days, few weeks. Just bless them, guide, and direct them, Father, we pray. These blessings we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing and face our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I would like to add an item for decision relative to filling the Development Commission Director position.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Let's vote.
Move approval with the
Thank you.
adjustment.
Do we have
We're
it?
voting.
Second.
Ready. All right. Thank you.
I've raised my hand.
Next order of business, Mr. Manager.
Okay. You have a public hearing on the 2013 CDBG application, and we have James Rhodes to present this matter to you.
Good morning, James.
Members of the board, we are drawing to the end of this project. This has been, if you look at it, is a 2013 budget that came through, or grant that came through our Community Development Block Grant Program. And this has been a long process, of course, for you, but I can't even tell you about the homeowners that are involved out there. But nonetheless, we've got just a little over a month and a half left to complete the project. And one of the program amendments, you may recall, we started out rather ambitiously and thought that we'd be able to service quite a number of lots within the Candlewick area sanitary district, and those are shown in the yellow hatched area. That was our original application way back probably in 2011, 2012. As you've seen on a number of projects you've dealt with, the prices have escalated over the last several years, so the reduction in scope is why we're here today in this public hearing. We will be servicing 15 occupied lots. Now, there are more than that shown here. Some of these are vacant where the sewer lines will run adjacent to, but that was just to primarily get into the heart of the Candlewick area. So the area bounded in the dark black line here also includes the pump station. Remember, we already have amended our service area to include it. We acquired that property, and that's where the larger upsize pump station is being constructed, all but complete at this point, and that is just outside the regular project area. So 15 occupied lots in here, a few along Stantonsburg Road, but the remainder are within the heart of Candlewick subdivision itself. So with that today, Mr. Chairman, that's the purpose of this public hearing. Anytime we have a program amendment, it does warrant bringing that before you for a public hearing. The other item I'll mention briefly is, since we are drawing to an end on this project, we do need to establish a closeout public hearing. So that will be the be-all, end-all for this project, and we're looking for that to be held at your September 10th meeting. So I think originally we were looking at the one later this month, but actually it will need to be bumped back to September. So 2 items after the public hearing that we're recommending motions on. First, approve the reduction in the service area as the program amendment, and then also set your closeout public hearing for September 10th.
That having been said, I declare the public hearing open. Do we have any speakers to that, Mr. Manager?
Mr. Chairman, nobody's signed up unless there's somebody in the audience who'd like to speak.
Does anyone in the audience need to respond to James? If not, then I declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board as the 2 requests being made by Mr. Rhodes?
Motion to approve both of them.
Second it.
All right, any discussion? If not, let's vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Manager, what's next?
Next, we have public addresses to the board. At this time, there is nobody signed up, again, unless there's somebody in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak.
All right, you're next.
Okay, next we have items to report, and the first item to report is our tax collector, Raymond Revilla, is going to give the annual settlement of taxes for last fiscal year, year 2017-18.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman
Good
and
morning.
Commissioners. Appreciate this opportunity. If I had to sum this settlement up for you, things that are supposed to be up are up, things that are supposed to be down are down. We ended a very good fiscal year, and I'm not going to just reread all the numbers, but the key points are we were charged with collecting $80.6 million in Pitt County taxes, $117.3 million of everything, including county, districts, EMS, municipalities. There were costs and fees of $6.5 million. Total interest collected of $490,000. So the total amount of collections of everything is $121.3 million. The collection rate that we ended the year is 99.29. That'll be the duplication of the June collection figure. That's 8 years in a row that we've had an increased collection rate, and the 3rd year in a row that we've reached 99% or higher. There's one item I did want to cover in a little more specifics, the insolvent list. And what the insolvent list is, it is only personal property. It has nothing to do with real property. County's lien never goes away on real property. But after 10 years of working, we've collected 99.31% of the 2008 personal property. It leaves $49,636 that we're asking to put your permission to put on the insolvent list. And like I said, that 2008 taxes reached their 10-year window on September 1 of 2018. This time, are there any questions about the report? I'd be glad to answer.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Let's vote. Thank you, sir. All right, next one.
Next is the June 2018 collection report, but I believe he combined that with his annual settlement
Okay.
report. So number 3 is your report on House Bill 284. This is the legislation that Governor Cooper recently signed into law. It's the new retirement option for sworn law enforcement officers. And we have a presentation by Florida Hardy, and I'll interject as needed, but Florida's going to handle this.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Board.
Good morning.
I think this is going to be a brief presentation, but we'll see what we come up with. This is in regards to House Bill 284. And just as a summary of it, House Bill 284 was signed into law by Governor Cooper in June. And what it does, it creates a new retirement option for our law enforcement officers, allowing law enforcement officers to retire after 25 years at any age, as long as they have a minimum of 15 years in law enforcement. What it does do, though, it is a reduced retirement benefit and would result in a reduced retirement check for the law enforcement officers. So it is not full retirement.
Florida, can we go back to that first screen? Just want to point out that, so the difference today with the new law, before you had to be at least age 50
Right.
in order to be able to qualify. Now you can be less than 50 and be able to retire with 25 years with a reduced benefit
That's correct.
in your retirement check.
Okay, I think there's another slide that'll get to that. The change does not include detention officers, and we've had lots of questions on that, whether or not it did include detention officers, and it does not. And it's not effective until July 1st, 2019, so we do have a little more time to work on this. Are there any mandated costs associated with this change? Not the retirement option in itself. It could cause higher turnover for the county if a lot of our officers decide to choose that option and retire early. So the cost would be associated with recruitment and training for any new officers that accept this retirement option.
Can we ask a question now? How many would that be?
Anything else?
I wanted to know, can you tell us at this point how many that would be?
I've got a
We've got
slide, I
further
think that's coming up, yeah. So the Leo retirement options, as the manager mentioned a few minutes ago, existing for retirement options, they have to be at least 55 years old and have at least 5 years of service, or 30 years of service at any age. That's current. Existing reduced retirement option is 50 years old and at least 15 years of service, and that would be a reduced option. And the new option allows 25 years of service at any age. That's what we just mentioned a few minutes ago. I've put a little caveat in that shows you when they're eligible for the separation allowance. As the law stands, they're eligible for separation allowance in that first category, 55 years and 30 years, or 30 years of service. Or the reduced option, they're not eligible at age 50. And with the new option, they're not going to be eligible unless they're at 55 years old. The eligibility for the special separation allowance based on North Carolina general statute, and this is general statute, this is not county rules. They must have completed 30 more years of credible service or have attained age 55 and have 5 or more years of credible service. Not be age 62. The option stops when the retirement option stops. The Leo separation allowance stops when they turn age 62. And they must have completed at least 5 years of continuous service as a law enforcement officer immediately preceding the service retirement. It stops at the death of the officer, or when the officer turns 62, or if they're reemployed in a full-time position that requires participation in the retirement system. House Bill 284 does not mandate a change in the eligibility requirements for the special separation allowance. What they did put in, they gave the local governments an option to do a lump sum payment to retiring law enforcement officers that retire prior to reaching the eligibility stage for the separation allowance. And that, a few minutes ago, I just mentioned to you that they have to be at least 55 with 5 years of service. They must have 30 years of credible service. Okay?
Florida, go back to that last point on the, saying that the last part of that last bullet on the separation allowance not to exceed the total, if you can hit that
That would
point.
otherwise be paid in separation allowance payments if someone was eligible for it. So you can't pay more than the lump sum amount than they would have been eligible for had they been eligible.
And we'll show you an illustration
Yeah,
of
we'll
that.
this will make more sense. So this is an example. This is not a particular employee, so we just created an example for you that shows you how this would probably work. The example, someone who'd be eligible at age 55, and maybe they have 30 years of service, and their base salary at this time is $55,000. So when we plug it into the formula and calculate it, we would pay this person's separation allowance over 7 years until they get to age 62. So over that 7-year period, $98,175 is how much we would pay them over that 7-year period until they reach age 62.
So that 98,175 divided by 7, what 12, 14,000,
It's about 11.
whatever that is budgeted. We budget about $300,000 a year, plus or minus, in the special separation allowance as the program is rolled out today, that is paid to those sworn law enforcement officers who
On a monthly
retired
basis.
until they hit age 62. So that would be that last bullet, budgeted each year and paid on a monthly basis. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we budget it currently. I'm not sure what that number, 300,000, represents. How many employees would you say there?
We have, I think, 22
Okay, 22 on it. They haven't hit age
currently
62 yet.
that are being paid the separation allowance.
So the example on the left is our present
This,
separation or retirement
yes,
plan.
ma'am. Yes.
The one on the right is the one that is
Optional.
being proposed
Yes, ma'am.
as an option from the state.
Correct.
Okay.
So if this were the same person who retired at age 50, has 25 years of service with that same $55,000, we'd have to pay the separation allowance if you calculate it over 12 years to age 62, and that calculates to $140,244.
But this is another one of those suggestions to the
It's an
counties that no
correct.
money is coming with
Correct.
from the state. Okay,
No money's
thank-
well, on the separation allowance anyway, that is county funds. For
Yes,
those who are eligible,
right,
that's county
but I'm
funds.
saying they're not proposing any help for an increase. Thank you.
Correct.
So if you reference the point we're making on the previous screen, go back to where you were, the last one. Okay. On the right, it shows the payout of $140,244. On the left, $98,175. What the legislation is saying is that if the county opts to do the optional payout, it has to be the lower of those two amounts in the example we gave you. Thus, what she's showing here, the $98,175, not the $140, whatever it was.
Correct, because the most they would be eligible for is the $98,175. So the maximum lump sum payout could be no more than that $98,175. Now, as we're interpreting the law, and our assistant county attorney has done a lot of research on this, it's optional, the maximum amount, or you could choose to do something different, not the maximum amount. Okay. And this amount we are giving you does not include FICA, which is the 7.65%. Okay, and the House bill also states that the lump sum shall be paid from available funds. So we'd have to find some way to estimate and budget for it, so your funds would be available. And we call this our cost estimation challenges. New hires who come in from other agencies, they bring in numerous years of service with them sometime, and they may quickly become eligible for the separation allowance. Just depends on how many years they had when they came in. So once they come to us, if they've done 20 years somewhere else and they come to work for us for 5, then that separation allowance belongs to Pitt County.
So could they could come from a county
Yes,
that is not going to exercise the option to Pitt County, who is going to exercise the option and pick up that money?
yes.
County or city could even be a sworn law enforcement from a municipal.
And the same thing for the mandated separation allowance. If they come to us from another entity, then Pitt County does pay that separation allowance when they retire, if they're eligible for it. And the other thing that we would not know, creditable service allowances, how much sick leave someone may build up, purchase service, they may go back and buy military time or something like that to add to their years of service. So it'll boil down to we'll have to do it on a case-by-case basis and determine what persons are eligible and how much they're eligible to receive. Under the current personnel ordinance, the early Leo retirees will not be eligible for retiree health insurance, and I've put in parentheses, currently the cost of retiree health insurance is $660 per month, so that's how much the county pays for that. And Ms. Williams, I think you asked about how many we have eligible. Within 5 years of the effective date of July 1st, 2019, we have at least 20 officers who will have 25 years of service. And we have 5 who will be eligible by July 1st. And this is people we currently have here. And this is only, we can count by their hire date, but there may be some whose hire date here is fairly recent, but they may have service from somewhere else that we don't know about, that the retirement system is holding. So we would have to check all of those things to give you a good estimate.
So going by the 5 who'd be eligible July 1, 2019, if you use the big picture example she gave a couple slides back, where it would be $98,000, let's say $100,000, we would have to come up with $500,000 to do, if the board opted to do the maximum payout of $500,000 to pay them, basically. And then thereafter, you'd have the remaining 15 officers with the remaining 4 years we'd have to budget for.
So that means there's an adjustment in the budget.
Does the 500 that you just mentioned,
That's what I'm talking about.
is that over and above the 300 we built into the system?
Yes, sir. We only budget the exact amount that we project that we are going to pay out in the following fiscal year, that $300,000 for the 22 individuals. That's all we budget currently.
And basically, in summary, it's not effective until July 1st of 2019. It covers only sworn law enforcement officers. It is optional, and it does say it must be paid from available funds. And currently, our folks are paid on a monthly basis, so we get to budget each year, you know, how much they're going to be paid each month. And that's it, I think, unless you have questions.
If I can add a comment, I wish what the, just my opinion as manager, I wish what the General Assembly would have said was to allow the law enforcement officers to retire with 25 years of service, let us treat them like we treat the others, and pay them monthly like we're paying them, because we can handle that budgetarily compared to taking a $500,000 hit just all at once or whatever it would be there moving forward. If we could budget like we're budgeting the $300,000 and just include them on that monthly basis, then we calculate it on an annual basis, it'd be so much easier to compensate them and allow them to be compensated early. But that is not a provision under this House Bill 284.
Correct.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does this prevent them from ever getting another job in another location or even in this county as law enforcement?
That's a good question. And that is something we've been trying to get answers to. I think Jordan has been working on that. You know, what happens if we pay them that lump sum?
Yes.
And
That
we
sounds good, I
do
guess,
not know
if
the
you're-
answer to that question today. You know, now with the mandated retirement allowance, we know if they go to work somewhere else full-time, it stops.
Well, this
It's
sounds like
supposed
a
to stop.
good deal if you're an officer. But I see a recruitment nightmare coming out of this. And the other thing, does anybody in the legislature think that the people in the detention centers, that they don't have a dangerous job? Why are they not included? I don't know.
That's what I think.
I have to think about this for a while.
And I went back to this slide just to show you it. I did use the age 50 to calculate. If this person were 47, of course, that figure would go up. And that could happen. I think the minimum age for law enforcement officers is age 21. So 25 years, someone could feasibly be 46 years old and accept that 25-year retirement option.
Beth, did you want to say something?
I may have said what I wanted to say a while ago, but it seems to me that if I understand correctly, no counties have approved this yet.
None that we know of.
In the state of North Carolina that we
None that we know of. And we've been reaching out to other counties.
It does seem to me, I think that we have a good, and I think you are a good steward of that. You keep us informed, keep us up to date. We have made improvements over the past few years relative to retirement. So I feel very strongly that this is not something that we want to buy into as far as playing into the hands of an option that seems to be something that the state is supporting that really will not help the counties.
The other element that Florida hit lightly, and that's the health insurance aspect of it, the additional cost to the self-insured retiree portion of the self-insured retirement plan. That's just another layer of the opportunity that has to be examined.
Can I ask a question?
Mary?
I realize that law enforcement is a stressful kind of job, and life is at stake. What about other careers with that kind of emphasis as well? The SROs, even teachers are at stake as well. Do we do this for any other career?
None that I know of.
I just, okay.
You could, though, technically retire with Leo from Pitt County or a county government or a municipal and then go work for example, State Highway Patrol.
Correct.
And not be, you can continue to collect your Leo and your state retirement, and then you'd be in a, am I wrong on that, or am I right?
They can go, well, yes, because the state retirement system is a different retirement system for law enforcement. I don't know how it's going to affect this lump sum separation allowance yet. That is what we're going to research a little further. We don't know if it'll pick up from the time they start working for the state and they count those years. That's how it would work with the mandated portion of it. So with this lump sum payment, that's a little harder for us to track at the moment, and I think legal is still kind of checking on that to see where it goes.
Lynn?
When you calculated the number for the 98,000, you calculated it based on 30 years of service. For the 140, was that also calculated on if they served 30 years?
That was 25 years.
25 years. Okay,
Yes.
because I was just checking, because I know the multiplier goes down, because the multiplier on the supplement
Right.
is based strictly on how many actual years you served
Correct.
in there.
Yeah, this
Are
was,
any, I know we checked with counties, did we check with any municipalities?
I've talked with the city,
Mhm.
and they are choosing to not do anything at the moment. That's
Okay,
what they
I
told
didn't
me.
know.
Yeah,
They haven't told us anything. But,
yeah. They've had discussions, just like we're having discussions, but.
well, I
no
think we've got
decisions.
some time to work
Yeah,
on it
we do.
and figured out what we're going to do. I think the biggest thing, though, is if you don't have your 20 in and you're not going to get your health insurance, I don't think a lot of people are going to take it, because the health insurance is more valuable than the supplement, because the supplement goes past 62.
Yes.
Not that the supplement's not valuable, but it's not going to cover your health care costs when you hit 63,
Correct.
you know? Okay.
Anything else at this time? Not, let's go ahead.
Okay, next are my items as manager's report. On item A, you've got your next meeting dates. For this month, you have your third Monday meeting, August 20th at 6 p.m. Then in the month of September, there's only one meeting on September the 10th. Item B is kind of a good news item to relate. Commissioner Ward asked us to recognize the Pitt County Council on Aging, which is a nonprofit agency in Pitt County. It has received their Center of Excellence certification. It's a 5-year certification that is awarded by the North Carolina Division of Aging and Adult Services. They have a whole process that they have to go through in order to be considered for their certification, so we just wanted to recognize them and congratulate them. Item C, the Health Department is applying for a CDC grant, and it's basically money that would be available October 1st. It's about $500,000 for 5 years, and this would be to continue their obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and stroke prevention grant initiatives. And they currently have some money from Vidant that they're utilizing, and this would allow them to extend that. So once we hear on that, we will report to the board, hopefully with a positive announcement and a budget amendment. Item D is just an opportunity for the various board members who attended the NACU conference last month to, if they had any reports they wanted to give or information. Mr. Chairman?
Any? Mary?
I'd like to say that overall, this was one of the best ones that I've attended as far as meat and potatoes. I'd like to say, though, that I went to that housing affordable session, and it was interesting of what they reported, that the interest rate would be going up and the supply is decreasing, and that drives, has something to do with cost of living and everything, and that the lumber, well, with all the fires and all the disasters we're having, the framing component is an index problem. Labor and the elevation of county of unfilled construction jobs. We are facing a real dilemma when it comes down to housing. Moving on to that, so I won't take up a lot of time because I do have a lot of notes. I want to get to the census. I went to the census thing early in the morning with the packed room, and I don't know whether or not we have, they said by now counties should have a counting committee. And I don't know if we have a counting committee already in place, but we should have already identified a counting committee, and there are resources, and the state certainly should have one.
Our planning director is indicating yes, correct?
We don't have it in place yet. We usually start about a year ahead of time. That will be January of next year to give us at least a year before April 2020 when the census is taken. So yeah, we've got it in our work program to start early next year.
Well, I understand that the state should have it and the area county should have, because come January and March, they're going to be asking for certain information. So you might want to check on that so that we can be prepared, because traditionally, he said that people are undercounted, and population has a lot to do with your economics and everything else. And he said in order for us to get the best results from the counting and census data, we need to be forewarned and prepared for that. So I thought I'd point that out as one of the meat and potato pieces that because I hadn't heard anything. So I wanted this board to know that we need to be getting on it. And we need to check with the state and find out who the state person is, because every state has them, and we need to move forward.
I'd like to say something. One of the things that I went to that was the most interesting had to do with what it was called When Crisis Comes to Town. And they spoke about Fort Lauderdale, or the airport down there, when they had the incident, and then the school shooting in Florida and so on. And I walked away from that after listening to the chaos and the panic and everything that went on there. And I'm thinking, we're not prepared in Pitt County. We may be for a hurricane, more so for that, but if there is something that happens like down there, I don't think we're ready for it. There may be plans, there may be efforts on the police force. I'm going to say that's not publicly knowledgeable, because I don't, and I don't know what the coordination is between all of them. The sheriff is the lead law enforcement agency in the county at a time like that, but then there's confusion that goes on as to who's really in charge, and it was a mess. And we could learn a lot from that. I've asked them to send me the presentations. They said they were going to make it available online. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and it's not online yet. When it finally is, I'm going to make sure all the commissioners have access to it, because I think it's worth reading and seeing what went on. Also, on a lighter note, and I have to say this, is I was in the Transportation Committee, and actually, by chance, I was sitting behind a card, and it was for Charles Farley. His name was there because they were actually expecting him to come and make a presentation. But in any case, it was just a chance that I was sitting there, and it was cold. And everybody in there was complaining about how cold it was. Mary, was it cold in the meetings? And was it cold in the meetings? Well, in the transportation meeting, I'm sitting around a bunch of the people, and I said, well, this is great. They said, what do you mean it's great? I said, this is proof. They said, proof of what? I said that we county commissioners are not full of hot air after all. Everybody laughed.
Everybody was like this too.
But there's something that comes out of this. The fact that Charles was expected to be there lends, I know we have our travel policy, and I voted also not to let Charles go to that because the 3 members had already been chosen. But there was an unexpected visitor, I won't mention name, that came from the county to receive an award. But I'm thinking that if a county commissioner is so active in, I'm going to say, government enterprises like that at a higher level, and they happen to be a member of one of those boards, that maybe we ought to revisit our travel policy and say, does that person have priority to go to a certain meeting in order to be able to do what they're supposed to do? So anyway, I think we just need to revisit that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to speak, and I agree with Tom on that coldness, because I was sick. The meeting rooms were so cold until I developed upper respiratory infection. I came back sick. But anyway, I agree with Mary and Tom also. The meetings were informative, and for me as a first-time attendee, they were. I attended the documentary screening on the hearing and then we talked about the overdose deaths of overdose and the rise of the opioid related deaths. So that was really interesting to see just how that is causing people to be addicted and to commit overdose deaths. So that was the first time attendees breakfast orientation I went to, like I say, was good. And some of the others, improving health outcome by integrating housing and health care. that goes hand in hand, you know. So, and of course, we got the legislative updates on what's going on in Washington, D.C., and how that affects our counties. Some of the other meetings I attended, the Rural Action Caucus, examining policies and solutions for counties in the rural areas. I had the fortune to be the delegate from Pitt County, and at the general session. So North Carolina, Pitt County, North Carolina had 3 votes, and we had a candidate from Person County, Jay Jeffers, ran for 2nd vice president of NACO. Of course, we rallied behind Jay, being from North Carolina. Ray. I said Jay. Ray, from North Carolina, and Ray lost on the 2nd round. So anyway, that did not prove profitable for North Carolina. So I was glad to cast my 3 votes for Ray, but we did not win. So again, thank you for electing me to go and to represent you. So I hope that I enjoyed it, other than being sick. But and of course, another one of the highlights of the meeting was to go to Opperland, because I've been there before. Opperland, right? I've been there before, but I've never seen been backstage. So we had an opportunity to go backstage. That was a hot walk.
It was.
Over there. But anyway, it was great. As Mary said, meat and potatoes. You got to hear some interesting things about it.
Mr. Chairman, we also received a national award at the NACO conference, and if Mike can just explain that real quickly, what we received.
Yes, so each year the Center for Technology, it's in conjunction with the National Association of County Commissioners, recognizes the top 10 digital counties in 5 different population categories. Our population category is 150 to 250,000. And so last year was our first year submitting for that. We placed 9th. We took the lessons learned, reapplied, submitted, and we were recognized as the 5th in our population category. So there was 50 counties across the nation, and we were 5th in our population category.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Mike. What else, Scott?
Okay, next we have item E. Just want to announce that PCC is having the ribbon cutting for their Early College High School building on campus. That'll be August 10th at 10:30 in the morning. All the commissioners are invited to attend and support that. The last item I have that's not on here, the Department of Social Services is recognizing Child Support Awareness Month, and they're actually going to have a Child Support Awareness Walk on Tuesday, August 7th, tomorrow at 9 o'clock. It'll be held at the Human Services Center. Anybody who would like to join them is welcome to do so. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do I have a motion for the consent?
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Ready to vote? Okay, next, Randy.
Good morning. This is just a resolution to continue the good work that the Sheriff's Office Lab is doing in the area of blood testing. This is just another pass-through of some additional state dollars to continue that effort.
Do I have a
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right,
Thank you so much.
that's good enough. Thank you, Randy. All right, next.
Okay. Next, under items for decision, we have a report on the Woodmore Farms road paving
Jimmy, it's
project,
waiting on you.
an
And we just need
update,
to
and then a
gotta wait.
discussion of the
Finish the
funding.
vote
Gotta
on the
wait.
last.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Years, if you'd mash it again.
What?
Jim.
Well,
Thank you. Okay, terrific, thank you.
What was that?
I said it goes to him well.
I just wanted some attention.
You done?
He got it. He definitely got it.
Need to bring back to you this morning some news concerning Woodmore Farm subdivision. A couple of things that have transpired since our last discussion. Number one, we do have a fully executed contract now with the paving contractor. We've yet to have a notice or pre-construction meeting. That should take place in the next couple of weeks or so, and then hopefully he's on to complete the project out there. He does have a 5-month period to complete all the drainage work and paving work in that development. The other item, just as a follow-up to your last meeting, there were a couple of folks that are property owners in that development that had some concerns. After that meeting, we did pull together a group. We had over 20 property owners here in your auditorium a couple of weeks ago to kind of go through the whole process as to how we got to this particular point we're at now. Had a lot of good discussion, and again, went through all the details, showed the numbers, showed the information about the bidding process. And I think everyone went out a little bit better educated about the process. So the one thing that's left hanging right now is the funding options. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our finance manager for him to give some examples for you.
Thank you, James. Yes, at our last meeting, we had several discussions about the funding options. We have put together a quick presentation of the 3 that we think are the most appropriate. I actually stopped at 9, but I know you didn't want to be here all morning. So here are the 3 options. Option 1 would take Woodmore Farms and model it after the first Woodmore project. For the presentation today, all of our numbers are assumptions. The total cost will be set at the final assessment, but for demonstrational purposes today, I wanted to use the budget that we have in place as our guide to give you a picture of what the funding options could look like. So in this first example, the $542,498 is the budget. Of that, $113,372 would come from the project fund that we set up when we did Woodmore Farms, and the remaining $429,126 would come out of fund balance, which at our last meeting we did move fund balance over to the project to execute the contract. Over a 10-year period, we would be looking at each property owner paying roughly $1,064. Option 2 would look at the same budget, but in this scenario, we would look to borrow the money. If we borrow the money, for our example today, I took a 4% interest rate. So our total cost, our project fund, and fund balance costs would remain the same, but we would be looking at $87,720 of interest over the 10-year period of the project. In this scenario, the county would absorb that $87,720, and the annual cost for each homeowner would remain the same at $1,064. Our third option, similar to option 2, we would still borrow the money at 4%. The project cost would remain the same, but in this scenario, the $87,720 would be rolled into the total cost of the entire project at the final assessment. So if we were to roll the interest cost of $87,720, each individual property owner would be looking at $1,236 as part of their annual assessment payment. So those are our 3 options. We did want to expand upon that third option. If we do pass on our interest costs as part of our discussion at our last meeting about early payoffs, right now, general statutes do not authorize us to adjust that final assessment. If we put the interest cost into the total cost and we assess that over a 10-year period, that amount is set. So if an individual property owner did want to pay early, they would be paying early over the 10-year period amount for the project. General statutes do give us an ability to give a discount. on any assessment that we set if the property owner pays the full amount of the assessment within the first 30 days. That would be at your pleasure to what that discount would look like, but that is an option that you could set, but it has to be paid within that first 30 days. So to recap, option one, we would model the first Woodmore project, taking the money out of the project fund and fund balance. Option two, if we do borrow the money, the county would absorb the debt, interest cost. And option three, if we borrow the money, the county would pass on the interest cost. As a staff, we are looking at recommending option one.
Scott, do you want to follow up on that?
If I could just make a quick comment. I do want to say, obviously, as staff, we've come full circle on this, going back to recommending option one and using the county fund balance. Part of, at least for me, philosophically, right now we've got Woodmore 1 out there, which is about $106,000 that we're paying back into the road paving assessment fund over a 10-year period. Woodmore 2 will pay back at the $542 if you go with option one. So you get a total of $650,000 that would be paid back into this road paving assessment fund. So within 5 years, you'll have theoretically $325,000 in that fund. And I guess what I would propose is if you decide to keep the road paving assessment policy in place, that we would amend it, if it doesn't already say, but to have it say that when funds are available in that fund, not that we would tap fund balance again to use the fund, but use these assessments as they're paid back into that fund. So technically in 5 years, again, you'd have $325 available, or in a lesser period of time, if you had another Woodmore 1 project at $100,000, you'd obviously would have that $100,000 in there quicker. But right now, we're projecting fund balance, just like we did in the budget workshops, to be greater than your 18 to 20% fund balance goal, slightly above it. But even with that being the case, I would hate to see another petition come in and you hit fund balance again for another $500,000 or whatever amount. But let the road paving assessment fund build back up via the assessments that will come in over the next 10 years, and then do the next project, if that's the board's desire.
Which of the three options meets what we told the property owners when they originally agreed to ask for this help? Anybody answer that?
Option one.
Option one.
And so that's the same things we told them in the beginning.
Yes.
Is that correct?
No, I don't think so.
We actually,
that's my point.
we actually said that we were proposing to charge interest.
Right, which is option three.
Correct.
So I suppose it matters when you define beginning, because they were originally lumped with Woodmore 1 and heard all of the same presentations, and so it changed mid-course when Woodmore Farms was separated out. So my response to the question, option one, is what they were told when they were originally lumped with Woodmore in the very beginning. And then when Woodmore Farms separated it out, then there became discussion of interest.
Had you finished, Jimmy?
No, sir.
All right, go ahead.
Every experience is a learning experience, and I think we have learned a lot since we implemented this policy. Quite frankly, I think to have a policy to help communities get their streets repaired is a good policy. And I would like for us to continue that policy. However, it has to be sustainable. And what I have learned in this process, that the policy as originally written was not sustainable, and we learned that also because we went back and altered the policy to include the option to borrow the money and let those who were benefiting pay the interest. And to me, that is a sustainable policy. The county is taking the liability of borrowing the money, but it is not costing the county anything because those developments that would be getting the benefit from the repaired streets would pay the interest. And I think that that is a reasonable approach, because if we start using fund balance, I don't think that is a good precedent. And also we have to keep in mind that we have around 25 miles of streets and developments now that need to be repaired. at the cost of this Woodmore Farms project at $542,000 for 1.2 miles, you're talking about $12 to $13 million. And we can put aside $200, $300 a year, but we will never meet that. However, if we say that we will borrow the money and the receiving development pay the interest, then to me that is a more reasonable approach and a more sustainable approach. So I'm still supporting option 3 because, again, I think that is a sustainable option. I don't think option 1 is.
Are you making a motion on that?
No, wait, Tom, and then Charles, and then Beth.
He's been itching for a while.
Okay, being in business, I always like to see proof that something worked. In the original Woodmere project, the proof would be, has that road been finished? And I think the answer is yes. Has NCDOT adopted that road in the original project?
Yes.
Okay, so we get success there. Jimmy, I agree with you. But I also remember there's 3 types of memory, good, bad, and convenient. And which of these mine is, I don't know, because other members of the board seemingly at a previous meeting did not agree with me. But it was my understanding, our original thought was we're going to put $220,000 a year aside. We did it for 1 year. We didn't do it the next 2 subsequent years. So can we do the 25 miles of road? It's a problem. But what are we doing as a board to push the legislature to change the policy? They could, with a sweep of the pen, say NCDOT that when a subdivision is paved and whether it's built out or not, you adopt the roads right then and there. They can do that. Right now, we have a perpetual problem, Jimmy, that anything that's done today, they're geared for the future of what we have now. Their road's not getting done, largely because the builders didn't honor their responsibilities when they originally put the subdivision in. So my question is to us as a board, should we not take some kind of formal action and approach the legislature to do something, maybe even try to rally other counties, because every one of the 100 counties out there got the same situation. While we may not be able to stop what happened in the past, it would seemingly be within our grasp to stop this from recurring in the future. So, and I agree with you on the interest, but right now I'm for option 1.
Charles, I'll come back to you, Jim.
I'm leaning very heavily towards Jimmy's motion for option
Beth.
3.
I totally understand what Tom is saying, but I think the bottom line is that the difference in the first project, which size-wise is almost equal to this one, right?
No, the first one's much smaller.
Okay, but a lot smaller or
Probably
half as small?
around
In other words,
25%.
a quarter size, 25%, but certainly not the ending cost.
Right. The first
I mean,
one
the first one was how much?
106,000. This is 542. This one's 51 lots. The first one was 20. Okay,
And
so
this
maybe
one
half.
is 5 what?
51 lots versus 20.
Yeah, but the price, the total price.
$542,000 versus
$542,000. So if it goes along with everything else, it's going to continue going up. And that, I was prepared to vote for option 1, and then I was going to make a motion that we, at the present time, suspend similar projects until we can revisit it and see, for instance, if option 3 is the best way to go, and if we want to put that out there. But I don't want to vote for option 3 at the present time, even though I think it may be a good option for us to propose, because it puts on the property owners, we can't afford this, just as you said, Jimmy. It's not, the future, if it keeps going up like it has in the past. So I'm for option one with the understanding that I'm going to move that we suspend this until we investigate it a little bit closer.
Glenn, and then Jimmy, do you want to speak again? And then Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This policy started out with the best of intentions, and it's become, a point of contention, really. And I think it's a good policy. I think that we should go with option one, but then I think we should amend the policy to an option three version where the county will be willing to serve as a pass-through for neighborhoods to use our borrowing power to get a good interest rate and be able to borrow the money for them to be paid back in this way with the interest. But I would like to go with option one for this one, mainly because they participated on the front end, and as the attorney says, kind of keeping a promise there. And then the entire amount gets paid back to the fund balance. So that's money that was separate from the fund balance put back into the fund balance.
Well, actually, unless you direct us otherwise, the assessments are coming back to the road paving assessment fund unless you direct us to have them paid into the general fund balance.
Well, if we amend the policy to where after this project, everything is an option three, then everything would go back to the fund balance, and then we would just use our borrowing power in the future, and that makes it a lot cleaner.
Right.
And everyone understands that on the front end, the county will serve as your pass-through agency. We will borrow the money, we will maximize our AA+ bond rating to get the best possible interest rate, and then you know what it is, and you know the front end cost. And I think a lot of it with this project, with the opposition to it, was that people were surprised that there's another $200 a year added on, and I understand that. So just to make it cleaner would be my suggestion. Handle this as option one with a motion to amend the policy to an option three version from this point on, and then it's clean. Everyone knows in advance if they don't want to pay interest, they don't come to us. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Jim?
Yes, I cannot vote to continue to support a policy that is not sustainable. So I'm not going to vote for option one. I'm going to vote for option three if I have the opportunity. If we see something is not sustainable and it is not going to work for all the citizens, then why would we continue to implement it? That doesn't make sense to me.
Chairman.
Mary.
Wait a minute, I'm not through. One other comment. To your point, Tom, about going to the legislatures, Scott, didn't we do that a few years ago and we had a workable plan and they wouldn't let us implement it?
Well, it was implemented, then it was taken away. Correct, Janice? You want to expound?
But that was us. That was Pitt County only.
No.
No, it was a statewide bill.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have two subdivisions who wants to pursue this. And if we create a policy, now you think about my district, the fact that we need a policy that can address homeowners who have streets that are atrocious. And whatever we do, we need to make it so that everyone can benefit throughout the county, and Pitt County overall would look like a welcoming and prosperous county. I would like to see us petition the NACO to make this an issue, because from roaming around in these meetings, other counties are having the same identical problem. Developers are coming up with subdivisions, and once they finish, it's boom, it's hanging on the residents, and that is not fair, because no one has pushed for this. And I like for this to be an initiative for us to petition the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners to make this an issue for boards of commissioners, for their residents, so that we can have equal access for everyone, the well-to, the not so well-to-do, and the poverty-stricken as well. It's just a little effort on the residents. You understand what I'm saying?
Scott, you may have answered a question I emailed back to you. I have not had the chance to hook up a computer that I use for remote stuff since yet, and so this last Friday I wasn't at work. So you may have answered it, but my question was, what specific statute prevents an early payoff beyond 30 days? And I also asked, is that under all kinds of loans? Does that only apply to LOB or COB, the limited obligation bonds, certificate of deposits? If it's a simple interest loan that the county gets, does state statute prevent us from doing something in our own county that would allow the people to pay it back and avoid the interest charge? I mean, $172 doesn't sound like a whole lot to some people, but $172 a year is a lot of money to some, and that's the interest payment that they're going to have to pay for 10 years.
So we did respond back. I asked Janice from the county attorney point of view to respond, and she had referenced Chapter 153A, Article 9, and kind of in correspondence with what Brian was saying about when you set the final assessment roll, once that's locked in, that within that first 30-day period, anybody can pay off the balance, but then thereafter, then it's locked in for that 10-year period. But Janice had also answered in that. I'm going to turn this to her because there's a separate provision where the county, outside of, I guess, 153A-205, Article 9, where we could assess an interest separate and apart from the project cost, right, Janice?
That's correct. I don't have the email right in front of me to recall, but if you have it there, that's fantastic. What I recall is in response to your question, I answered your question in several parts. I said that this whole process is governed by Article 9 of Chapter 153A, and 153A 193.1 is the response to your question as to what statute prohibits the early pay. That's the statute that allows application of an early pay discount if the entire amount of the assessment is paid within 30 days from the date of publication of the confirmed assessment roll. But there's really two things going on. That statute authorizes a discount for early payment within the first 30 days, which is a little different than interest. The cost of the project is determined in your final assessment roll, and what the email went on to say was that the county can either incorporate its borrowing cost in the cost of the project, and that's part of the assessment roll, and as Brian said in his presentation, that amount is set and is not then modifiable. However, the county also has the authority, there's another statute that gives the county the authority to charge its own interest for the lost opportunity of investing that money itself. And if the county chose to charge its own interest, then you could fashion a condition in setting your own interest that incorporates an early prepay penalty. What that does, that we have not in either the first Woodmore or in this Woodmore ever entertained an additional interest rate imposed by the county for the opportunity cost of loaning the county's money for that purpose. So it isn't something we've ever considered until now. It is something the board could consider. You could choose to charge interest on top of the money that you are loaning, your own interest, either in addition to or instead of the interest that a bank may charge. But that just has not been part of the discussion so far. But to answer your question, yes, that's possible.
So effectively, if I may, since you're answering my question, we could go with that and satisfy what Jimmy wants, and also be able to help people out there that have the means to be able to pay it off in 3 years or 5 years or whatever to avoid any additional interest. Is that correct?
Well, it's really kind of a double shot then, because if I'm understanding correctly, what Commissioner Garris is proposing is that you borrow the money, and if you borrow the money, the county will incur interest. And he's saying that that cost of that interest ought to be passed on to the neighborhood. And if that's the case, then that's included within your assessment roll. If you add interest from the county on top of that, that's another layer of interest that you can charge an early payment benefit from, but there's two interests involved there. There's the bank's interest and then the county's interest.
So why can't the county borrow the money, knowing it's going to have to pay the interest, but it's not really part of the assessment, but it's counted out there, you know what it is, and now the county does what you just talked about, imposes its own interest rate that will compensate for the borrowed money, and so therefore the citizens get to win out of it if they can pay off early. And also, as Jimmy's right, then it could become more sustainable. I'm not saying less messy, but more sustainable. And 25 miles of roads out there, who's going to help with them?
Well, that then is option 2 plus county imposed interest. So
That means
option,
the county would be paying the interest, and it would be costing the county.
Yeah, but we could offset that by charging interest ourselves.
yes, you could.
You could do model with, this may be what you're saying, you could do option 1. The county, under option 1, where the county's loaning the money, we're losing the opportunity cost of being able to keep that money invested in instruments we have it, that $500,000, 542. So we're losing our investment earnings off of it. So the interest Janice is talking about technically could be the county funds it with fund balance and we charge them an interest that recoups what we would have lost over that period of time.
That's correct.
That's correct, but the county then is also absorbing the cost of the borrowing of the money itself, which may or may not be equivalent to the lost opportunity cost of what interest you might have made or how you might have otherwise invested it. The other thing to remember in this, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, is there is no feasible bank loan borrowing for this project. So there is not a feasible, it's not going to be analogous to the mortgage on your home. Where you borrow money, you pay it back, and if you pay it back early, you don't pay the interest. Because there's no collateral in this road. The county doesn't own the road. It's not a traditional bank loan borrowing. It would be part of a more traditional county borrowing, which would be a limited obligation bond or something else, in which case the prepayment of the portion of the interest attributable to this project within a larger borrowing might not have the same impact for the county. It might not come out the same in the wash if you do it that way.
Is there anybody that's got a motion that will do what we told the property owners we were going to do in the beginning?
I got one.
Mr. Webb.
I'd like to make a motion that we go with option number 1 and that we also suspend the policy until we have further discussion and further discussion and reframe it.
You have a second?
Second that motion.
I cannot
Any
support
further
that.
discussion?
I cannot support that motion. I may be the only one. It's okay. Because then that is not going to be treating the rest of our community fairly. Because they come to us and with torn up streets, and we're saying we can't help you even though we just got through helping this section over here. So
Mr. Chairman.
that's not a sustainable policy.
Mr.
so I'm
Chairman,
gonna-
that's not what Commissioner Webb is really saying.
What is he saying?
He is saying that he would like to see us come back and do further, I mean, this is open up the can of worms. He's saying we go with option 1, we pursue it just like we did with the first one, but then we come back and we discuss this, because now we know it's a bigger issue than maybe we thought it was initially.
All right, let's
So
vote.
why do we continue it with another $400,000? Why don't we stop it now? We know that it is not sustainable. So why are we going to perpetuate it?
If we continue it under option 3 for future projects, it's sustainable because the money doesn't come from us. It comes from the bank and we're just a pass-through agency.
But I'm saying if we vote on option 1 is not sustainable. Option 3 is sustainable. So why would we perpetuate an option that is not sustainable?
All right, let's vote.
Okay, we're voting on,
You got a motion made and seconded.
What was your motion, Gwen?
Option 1 and then to revisit the policy.
And suspend the policy.
Suspend the
Suspend the
policy to
policy.
be
Can we
revisited for.
revisit it and come up with
When
a
are we
better
going to
one?
revisit?
We'll bring it back to you.
Because if we don't do it with this board, this is what my problem is. I'm with Jenny.
Bring it back in September.
I can see a workshop coming out of this to where we can beat this around a lot.
I'd suggest September or October because we're getting out of the paving season anyway for to be able to have the time to even do
We can
the
do that.
project.
Okay, you with that, Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
September the 11th through the 19th, I won't be available, so can we schedule it before or after that?
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the tax collector Raymond Revilla, who's going to ask you to give him the order of the collection for Pitt County property taxes for the fiscal year 18-19.
I make that motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Vote. Okay, next.
Next, we have PJ Andrews, who's coming up regarding the Contentnia Creek debris removal project, and I think he's going to explain how that we've broken this into phases compared to the total award, about $500,000, compared to this is the first 8 miles, I believe.
Yeah, I move that we approve this.
Second.
Any discussion?
Second.
All in favor? Vote. Clean them out.
Yes, sir.
Get her done.
All right, next.
Need Ms.
Alan
Perkins
Everett
Williams
on
to
the
do that.
Priority Dispatch Emergency Fire Dispatch Protocol software. This is a new addition to our 911 center that Alan would like to talk about.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. I'm here with the good news report this morning.
Good,
and that is that we're asking for your support of a contract that will allow our 911 division to implement emergency fire dispatch protocols with the company known as Priority Dispatch. Total cost of the project is $93,357. Part of the good news is the state 911 board has indicated that they will reimburse us nearly $90,000 of that overall project. So therefore, it's only the county with a balance of roughly $3,300 that we would owe. And of course, we have that in our budget.
Do we have a motion for this?
Yes, go ahead.
Can we trust the state for doing it?
Yes, yes, yes.
All in favor? Vote. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay, next you have James Rhodes to talk about the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Advisory Committee.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, we have the need for 2 county appointments to this particular committee. It is a major committee that will be working over the next year or so with the Metropolitan Planning Organization to develop a 25-year plan for our metropolitan area here. So we do have, and again, it's the board's discretion, either from the advisory board, the planning board, or from your group. Last week, we did get 2 volunteers from our planning board, Maria Rogerson and Danny Smith, if you wanted to appoint them, or take one from the planning board, one from your board, or both from your board. That's your discretion. So today, we're looking for 2 appointments, and that work will begin within the next month or so. So the appointments are needed for today.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move that we appoint Maria Rogerson and Danny Smith.
Second.
Any others? If not, let's vote. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Elliott.
Next is the designation for your voting delegate to the upcoming NCACC conference this month in Catawba County.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Who's attending?
You've got Commissioner Huggins, Perkins Williams, McLaughlin, Farley, and Vice Chairman Webb.
All right. I
Okay.
haven't done it. It's not something I like.
Mary
to-
said she hadn't done it, so let's give her this opportunity.
I pushed it off on Annie last time, so.
All right, all in favor of Mary, vote.
Make it, you know.
And you didn't say get back, it's a trap. I said you didn't say get back, it's a trap.
No.
All right, the Agriculture Advisory Board.
Motion to reappoint Laureen Smith.
All right, any others? Not, let's vote.
Lauren White.
Correct.
White, excuse me.
Convention and Visitor Center.
We
Recommendation,
don't have, I don't have anybody on that.
your recommendation by the City of Greenville to appoint Robert Scheck.
Pleasure of the board.
Can I make a nomination?
That's your prerogative.
I'd like to appoint someone from my district, Karen Thickpin. Some time back, I know she filled it out, but anything.
Is she on the list of applicants?
She ain't on this list.
We would need an application from her. We could bring it back.
I'd like to see someone from my district on that board.
Well, have we had any nominations for who the people were?
The city of Greenville has recommended and nominated Robert Scheck.
Do we have a board member here today nominate that person?
You already have.
I'll nominate him. I know him, I know he's available, and
All
if you're,
Now,
whoever you're
Mary,
thinking of has not gotten on the list, hadn't applied for it.
She
then-
has applied in the past.
do you want to put her name in contention, Mary?
I do.
All right, we got that. Anybody else?
And this is actually, this nomination, I believe, comes from the city of Greenville for you to act on, so I don't really know that it's. You're right.
This
I may be
is
wrong
ours,
on that, but.
How many people on it live in the city? They're all there. If you look at the board compilation. I be watching these appointments.
All right, let's vote on the recommendation of this. Now, Madam Clerk, who is the name?
Bob Scheck.
Yes. And if y'all want to rule otherwise, you can, but all in favor of that nomination, let's vote.
Oh, you do.
I did, I know she went for some time ago.
All opposed? All right, thank you. Next.
Okay, next you have appointment of an animal cruelty investigator on page 120, and that's an existing staff person. That is Michael Sean Evans.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to appoint Michael Sean Evans.
Any others? If not, let's vote. All right, we've had requests for a closed session. Madam Attorney, will you lead us?
Mr. Chairman, you have,
Wait a minute.
Commissioner Ward asked for
Oh,
consideration
excuse
of
me, I'd
the
forgotten her.
item.
Go ahead, Beth.
I'd just like to make a motion that in light of the success, the strong leadership, and the strength of the Pitt County Development Commission as it is today, I would, in bringing economic growth to Pitt County, I want to request that the Pitt County Development Commission immediately begin actively seeking and searching for a new director due to the retirement of Wanda Uhas while Mrs. Uhas is still there and she can help lead us on this search because no one knows better than she does what we need in this place.
Beth, is that a motion or a recommendation?
Motion.
All right, now do we have a second for her motion?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, can I make just a brief comment that you do have in about 30 days a presentation recommendation concerning the convergent process study and economic development. I would just ask if the board would make any consideration to waiting that 30 days because in effect the whole model was for all of the PCDC staff to be incorporated into the proposed structure of the new public-private partnership, but obviously if the board has a will and a desire otherwise, that'll be spoken today, but just wanted to state that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a statement I'd like, or something I'd like to say. Scott, I met with you 2 Fridays ago. I gave you a list of a lot of questions and a lot of marked up copies of some things that came up to us about this convergent issue with the development. At our last meeting, I said something to the effect of, I had about 50 questions. Could we put it off till I got back from the convention, yada, yada, and that's how it led to that meeting. And the reason I wanted it was so that when they were discussing this merging of all the developments around the county, development groups around the county, some of my questions would be put into the mix. Have you taken my questions to them, in particularly to Ann Wool and Tony Cannon and Spence, I forget the first name. Have they heard what my feelings are? And
since you and I met, I don't believe our group has met, but I do plan on taking those to them.
Okay.
And
Can you
vetting that.
share them with us?
Huh?
Can you share those 50 with us?
Well, I could. I've got the stuff here. as copies. I really don't want to send it out, because I'll tell you why I don't want to send it out to everybody on the board. I want you to form your own opinions. I might be wrong. I don't think so on this. But I'm looking at this whole thing with a great deal of suspicion. While there may be some benefits with it, the county's the only one that's chartered with development. Is that a correct statement? Isn't the county the one that's chartered with responsibility for development?
Yes, we have legislation that creates the Development Commission, yes, for that
So why
purpose.
is it that GUC, if this group comes together, GUC, who is effectively owned by the city of Greenville, and the city of Greenville, why do they get votes at a table that's going to be principally funded by us? And it's just like when you talk about the Committee of 100, one of my questions. Who funds the most amount of money to the Committee of 100? I think it's around $30,000, and it's we, the county. All these efforts are spearheaded that have been successful in the county, or not all of them, but principally through the county. And I see this I see the city of Greenville and Greenville Utilities trying to usurp our responsibilities and authorities and to minimize our vote and input into it. So, yeah, I have a lot of questions about this. And so it kind of piggybacks off of what I think Beth is saying here, is I want to put the brakes on this. They may have it in 30 days, but they're already out there trying to find who the leader of this group is. They're interviewing. Has anybody on this board been a part of that?
No.
Has anybody on this board been questioned like they went out and they've questioned all the citizens that they wanted to be on this board? I'm not happy with the fact that the proposal as it is now stands is if you can raise private money in the private sector, is that somehow they can buy a place at the table. That to me is pay for play. I'm not sure that that's even legal. But there's all kinds of issues here, and I don't like it. So I agree with Beth. I think we need to do this. Yeah, you can go ahead and go on with it. But Scott, when I brought that letter to you, where you signed it, Spence signed it, Ann Wall signed it, and Tony Camden signed it, and I read that letter, and that letter basically said to me, it's a done deal. And my question to you was, Scott, why did you even sign that? When we, the county, the commissioners, have not been, I'm going to say, party to the in-depth discussions that are going on. Now, I have met with P.J. Conley in the past, not about this, but other issues, but he did bring up where he wanted to have the city of Greenville and the county work together and so on. Well, that's fine. But when I personally feel that we're being, as a county, deceived by the city of Greenville and Greenville Utilities, and yes, I'll say that out in public. I don't know. I'm very distrustful of this whole thing.
All right, wait a minute. Mary, then Ann, then do you want to say something, Scott? And then Jimmy?
I want to say that I have a problem with this, and I heard it today, this morning at 8 o'clock. And I think our manager knew that I was very interested in some aspects of Greenville Utilities. And I was flatly turned down and said that county commissioners cannot serve on the Greenville Utilities Commission. I had problems with that, and I think the manager knows my feeling about it. But with that in mind, when people don't want an elected person to be privileged to certain kinds of information, sends up red flags to me. What is being hidden and what is being covered up? Because if I ask a question, then the citizen ought to want to know, because that's why they elect you, to ask questions and to be in oversight. So I have problems with that. My next thing is, since we're the only group that are chartered to do this, then why is it being passed off and we're funded? So I found that out today, but I am with you.
Well, listening to all of this, and Tom rightfully have a lot of questions that I see are valid. One being, we're the only entity with some land to develop. So, and that means that, and we have the least number of votes. It looks like it's a lopsided idea.
It is.
That is the way I see it. So, to support Beth's motion, that would keep us, the county, with our own economic development department, and making sure that we are ready to hire a person to take Wanda's place once she retires. So I see it as a lopsided idea.
We need to take that lead.
Scott?
I just want to first say, obviously, I will follow the will of the board, but second of all, I just want to say, in regards to the process, there is no current recruitment effort for an executive director, aside and apart from what was mentioned today in the motion. The one-on-one sessions going on right now, a letter was sent out to about 100 people in the community. All the Pitt County Development Commission board members received one, the mayor, managers of all the municipalities, plus a number of private sector individuals. Just to attached to it was the plan of work or the scope of what this organization might look like in terms of the number of jobs it would create, the type of tax base it would create, and other metrics, and to get people's opinion as to would you support such an entity coming into existence if it were to happen. Such things as the governance model as to who would sit on this if it were to be created, as well as what the staff structure would look like, has not been released or developed. But I did tell of the 4 entities primarily working on this, obviously being myself with the county, the city, GUC, and Committee 100, I said that until such instruments, documents were delivered to the Board of Commissioners, I told them, I think last week before, I said, in my mind, we'd probably be lucky if I've got 50-50 in terms of percent favoring such an entity. So, but I do realize the board's feeling on this, and just wanted to state that, and obviously I'll do as the board directs.
Jimmy? Yes. I understand and do not disagree with any comments that's been made. I am very, very concerned about what we are doing, but I think that to support this motion today is a little premature. I do know the county has put how much money in this convergence study?
$10,000 or $50,000.
$10,000 or $50,000, and I really think that it would be more prudent for us to wait until after the presentation that they're supposed to make to us on September the 10th.
Correct.
And that will be their recommendation. They're going to take, and let me, total clarity here. I have been in one meeting, Tom, with that leadership team to kind of introduce this idea a couple of months ago. So I think that right now it's a little premature. I would prefer to wait until after that September presentation, because in August, the month of August, is going to be the big information gathering that Convergent is going to do. And one of the things I'm extremely interested in is what they will tell me on September the 10th relative to what the private sector is willing to invest in this project. So I would prefer for us to wait until after that meeting.
Anybody else?
Well, again, the private sector, pay for play, the way it's been laid out that I've seen, I can't support that, Jimmy.
Okay.
And I mean, I'd love to see the private sector get involved, but just because they put $25,000 or some amount up, all of a sudden they get a seat at the table. That's not. When you get too many people on a board to try to make a decision, it becomes a mess. And I see this growing into a big mess. And also that we, the county, are going to lose our leadership role in this.
We're already voting.
Mr. Chairman,
In making this motion, I'm not saying that we don't want to keep a voice at the table for convergence. I am saying that we have had a lot of success when we go back to when I first came on this board relative to development. It has not just been within the county, it has been service to some of our smaller towns. We've had industries coming to Ayton, to Farmville, and all of it has been directly related to our Pitt County Development Commission. All I want to do is support that commission until we get more information and we hear more and we can make more of a decision. But when I look at the 4 signatures, I see Pitt County in Convergent, the low man on the totem pole when it comes to vote. Yes, I know they have not set up their organization officially, but it seems like they have. And I strongly feel like we must support this, and all this means is that, and you know as well as I do, that we do searches for leaders of our departments, and we have to go back to the table. So I'm just saying, let's get started now and continue supporting our Pitt County Development Commission as it is.
Jimmy, has the Pitt County Development Commission undertaken to get a new?
No, we have not. You know, I'm your
Is there any
representative.
program there for that?
Excuse me?
You're a liaison, you at all the meetings, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And can you speak to that? That's my point.
Well, I still think that it is premature to do that because, first of all, if you sent out applications or requests to seek someone for this position, and if I were that person and I knew what was going on in the county, I would not apply for this job right now. I would wait until we had some clarity on what the form of that job was going to be. I just think we're premature. And if we put this back on the board of the Development Commission, I think that's putting us in a little bit of an uncomfortable position. So and listen, I'm on the board. I support the Pitt County Economic Development Board. What we want to do, and I think everybody on this board and everybody on that board wants to do, is what is best for the economic development of Pitt County in creating investment and creating jobs. And at this point in time, no one has explained to me how this new structure that is being perceived is going to do that. But again, I think we're a little premature in going out seeking a director for the Pitt County Economic Development Group right now. I still think it would be better to wait until after the September the 10th meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
As a rebuttal.
Beth's motion doesn't prevent that. Not at all. We can always come back and look at it at a later time. And so I just believe that she needs to. The question I'd have that goes with premature. Why are they interviewing somebody to head this task up?
They're
or
not.
getting ready to.
They're
Well,
not.
they're getting ready to.
They're not.
See, they
When did that change?
There's never been any recruitment advertising for someone to head this up. But I think there's a rumor out there that they are, but the only thing they're doing is interviewing 100 community leaders, asking them, do they support the proposed scope of
Well,
work?
that's independent of what I've been told, that they're actually looking at somebody to take over. I'm going to call it the leader of the combined development forces.
Unless I've had the wool pulled over my eyes or I'm being deceived.
With some of the individuals that you're dealing with, look for that. Look for the wool being pulled over your eyes.
As a rebuttal.
I mean, one of these individuals, and I'll say the name, and I'm really kind of ticked off about this. How can I trust Ann Wall when she was given a directive by her board at a September meeting, and we were a combined meeting with us, with the combined services of animal services, a directive to come back with some kind of recommendation or whatever, and her comment was, well, when she heard that from the council, it was only, what was the words? It was only a suggestion. Scott, if you came to us and after we gave you direction to do something, and it came to us, and you said it was only a suggestion, would you think you'd be still employed?
No.
Can I have one more comment? I think that we are way outnumbered so far in the plan for Convergent. The number of people on the first 100 have also changed a lot. If you go back and look at the people who are presently on it and the ones who are on the original and the
Committee 100.
first, yes.
Committee 100.
Yes, of the Committee of 100. But I still say that all we're doing is continuing on with a successful development commission for Pitt County and our citizens. And if something comes of it later on and we need to look at it again, then I say, okay. But I think we need to keep our development commission as it is, serving all of our smaller towns and communities as they have done in the past very well.
Mr. Chairman, in support of what Commissioner Ward is saying, I want to say this. When you look at how we appoint to the various boards and commissions and how the public perceives it, a recommendation comes from the leader. And for the most part, not always, for the most part, this board goes with the recommendation from the head of the commission that comes in. And those people who serve are not people from a diverse district representation of those of us who sit here. I realize that everyone does not want to serve, and all of the districts are not equally. But this is how we pull the pool. And some people just feel like they just don't have the qualification. But I still say that the board leadership on the various recommendation is who we normally go by. And this recommendation comes, they block who they want to block, and they recruit who they want to do as the leadership evolves. I'm ready to vote with Beth.
You know, we've got a little out of realm of what we were talking about, I think, when you go from one projection to another. And it's my weakness in sitting here as your chairman to let it conclude.
Thank you.
But Beth's made a motion. We've had a second. We've had a beat around discussion about it. So all in favor of her motion, vote if you haven't voted. All opposed? All right. Okay. What else, Mr. Mann?
Next, you have closed session, Mr. Chairman.
May I ask one question before we go into closed session?
Yes.
As your representative on the Development Commission, when do you want us to start this recruiting process? Immediately?
I think that's up to the commission. But we have said by the vote, I mean, you answer, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Well, she retires, what, spring of next year?
Yes, and I just think while she's there and this group makes the decision is what I think is important. And we have a strong commission, I think, your group, and they have served well. We've always had really good citizens to serve on this commission, and they take it very seriously. And that is the group that will be doing the search and making the decision. But I don't want it to be put off forever. So I think that's when the commission meets. I think I've said that in the motion.
One other question.
I put the word immediately. I put immediately in my motion.
Do I need, and you, Mr. Chairman, do as your board, do you still want us to meet with this convergent group that's gathering the information to see what?
Yes, and I do too.
Yeah,
I'm not
I mean, that was part of the discussion. She said that all of us agree, need talk.
Yes.
But we have already concluded if we're going to be doing a search for the Economic Development Directive, that our Pitt County Economic Development is going to stay in place.
Yes.
And so Convergent needs to understand that.
Yes.
Thank you,
Because
Mr.
that
Gass.
would surely
Thank you for strong
change
leadership.
their mode of operation.
Thank you, Mr. Garris, for strong leadership, Mr. Chairman, please.
All right.
You're so
Closed
kind.
session.
You are
It has been suggested that
Direct
this,
us to a closed session, please.
yes, it has been suggested that this board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney employed by the public body to preserve the attorney-client privilege, also pursuant to 143-318.11A6 to consider the qualification, competence, performance, character, and fitness, conditions of appointment or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee, and also under 143-318.11A1 to prevent the disclosure of confidential information.
No.
So moved.
TJ would not need to.
All right. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session, vote.
Get me some water.
All right.
Did we have a second on that motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
Three of them.
Thank you.
Mark is on air.
All right, ready?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the July 9th closed session minutes as to the content only.
I second.
All right, let's vote. Next order of business.
I move for adjournment.
I second.
No.
I take that back. I forgot. Go ahead.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I want commissioner comments because I have a comment.
No, we're not commenting yet.
Okay.
Okay.
I just don't want to dismiss until.
All right.
Okay, I make a motion that we extend to the county manager a 5% raise based on his current salary and to become effective in the next pay period.
Can we vote on that now?
Second.
All right.
It has to
Do
be
we have a
seconded.
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, let's vote. All opposed? No. Okay. All right, and now comments.
Recently, on the news, I saw where some county, they had invested into a body scanner. And that with all the things that are going on with smuggling stuff into the detention centers and so on, it sounded like a good idea. And then I found out that we, as a county, the sheriff's department, was also looking at a body scanner. Scott, are we doing anything to actively get that, or is that on the back burner? Or
No, I've had active conversations with the sheriff on that. It's $186,000 he included in this year's budget. In terms of his overall budget increase, I mean, he was like $1 million, I think, above last year. I did propose to him that he use asset forfeiture seizure funds to purchase that, and I'd be willing to bring that before the board and have it purchased immediately. He says he has other plans or other commitments on the asset seizure forfeiture dollars. One other option we could look at is if they have continued overcollection of the detention center fed bed monies. Obviously, we've got HVAC units phase 3 to pay for, that he's probably going to come to you mid-year. If there's overcollection, if there's overcollection, even more so than that, we could consider the body camera, I mean, not the body camera, but the body scanner at the same time. So we have been going back and forth. He did request it. It did make it through budget. It is on CIP as well.
Okay.
Any further comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
As everyone can see, I did not vote for the 5% raise for our manager. That does not mean that I do not support our manager, because I do. I explained why I wasn't going to support that, and I'm not going to go into details on that, but I do want everyone to know that I support Scott. Scott is a great manager, and we in Pitt County are blessed to have him. Thank you for Scott. Scott, for all you do for our community.
Thank you for your comments.
You didn't thank him for his vote, though, Scott.
Because he doesn't.
All right, any further comment? If not, do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Let's vote.
Oh,
Yes, it's all.
I'm getting up.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.